Get in the know. Non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
The Rock knows how you feel about pie.
Welcome in to Purple Daily, Daily Vikings Entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die, and we have a fun week planned for you guys. At least we think it's going to be fun. It's that time of year where there's really no news until we get a Jefferson contract. Training camp is, 5 weeks away or whatever, so we figure let's have some fun here, and let's debut for the first time in Purple Daily history historical pie charts, gentlemen.
The Rock knows how you feel about pie.
Presented by our friends at TCL. No matter what you watch, TCL has award-winning TVs for any budget, any space, all with stunning picture quality. TCL makes more than just TVs. They offer mobile products, audio devices, home appliances. TCL brings you joy and simplicity through innovative technology. Learn more at TCL.com. Inspire greatness with TCL. So on Mondays after Vikings games, we do the pie chart of blame if they lose, the pie chart of praise if they win. And we've done rewind episodes in the past where we dive into like historical topics and stuff or games or whatever it is. But we figured let's blend the two together. Let's go back and look at some of the more high profile, fun or depressing, wherever they fall, games in Vikings history. And we're going to do a bunch of them between now and through the 4th of July weekend. Starting with today, Judd Zulgad has a pie chart of praise for the 1998 Thanksgiving Day massacre of the Dallas Cowboys.
The Rock
Randy
knows how you
Moss
feel about pie.
breaking out on national TV.
Now, this game was a ton of fun to watch back. I consider this to be one of the two most influential Moss games that season because I think the coming out started for sure against the Packers Monday night, Lambeau Field. That was the first one. But if he wasn't on the map by the end of that game, he sure as hell was on the map by Thanksgiving night, 1998. A 46-36 Vikings win in which my pie chart of praise will include no defensive players from the Vikings because it was 46-36.
You know, I already disagree. I have to take issue with that. We'll get into it.
Too much pie to give out to a team that put up 46
Troy
points.
Aikman got bludgeoned in this game.
Yeah, but the Vikings couldn't tackle. The Vikings missed so many tackles. Going back and watching that. And yes, he got bludgeoned. The Cowboys also, in fact, I wrote down one stat that Madden gave. In the second quarter, the Cowboys already had dropped 6 passes.
Yeah. It was like Michael Irvin and a bunch of random dudes.
And Irvin
right?
dropped a couple, at least one that was just brutal.
Yeah. So, well, and just for the audience too, the games that we're talking about here today, and then we should just give you guys a list because we have it here. You can watch all these games on YouTube. So we're picking games if you want to watch along or like skim them this week. So we're going to do the 98 Thanksgiving game here in just a moment. We're going to do the 2004 Vikings beat the Packers, the Moss Mooning game. We'll do the 98 championship game, the 2009 championship game, the Minneapolis Miracle. So that's like the first batch. And there's at some point we'd love to do one of the Super Bowls from back in the day too. But we're picking games that are available to watch on YouTube so you can watch along and kind of remember back. But just to set the scene here, as you said, the Vikings win this game 46-36. Going into the game, the Vikings were 10-1. The Cowboys were 8-3. The Cowboys were still a good team here. 1997, the year before, they actually were a 6-win team, like coming off their dynasty. But Chan Gailey gets hired as the head coach. It's kind of a last gasp for them. Troy Aikman's in his early 30s. And this was the game, I think, that really put the 98 Vikings on the national map. Because it's like, okay, 10-1, but can you beat the Cowboys on Thanksgiving in Dallas? And to go and just put up ridiculous numbers, 3 50-yard touchdowns in the first quarter offensively for the Vikings.
It's crazy.
Including a flea flicker on like the third play of the game.
Yep.
Randy Moss winds up catching 3 passes for $163 and 3 touchdowns. Should have had at least one more touchdown, but he dropped a pass late in the game. Troy Aikman threw for 455 in a losing effort, but that's kind of the scene setter here before Judd gets into his pie chart.
And Deion Sanders did not play in this game because of an injured big toe, leaving some slappy named Kevin Smith to cover Moss and Carter. And let me tell you right now,
Woodson had like a bad arm or something.
Yeah, and he still played and broke up. He broke up a couple passes. But Dion, this could have been an absolute confrontational classic if you had Dion on Moss. But Dion's toe hurt.
He was ducking.
I think at that point in time, Dion probably said, Dion doesn't need to play today.
Business decision by Dion.
Business decision big time. Well, he didn't like to be embarrassed, and I don't blame him. And the thing that I keep going back to as I watch games, especially that season, the amount of guys that Moss just embarrassed. Like, I don't know what they were supposed to do at some point. They're grabbing him. He's drawing flags left and right. And as Madden said, you can't blame him because guys are like, I'm beat. I'll take the penalty. I don't want to give up a touchdown. So anyway, all right.
How many slices?
1, 2, 3,
5
slices. 5 slices.
5 slices.
Starting off very
real quick,
small.
before you get into your Thanksgiving meal here, as we go back, maybe you should mix in a scoop of AG1 to just make sure that your nutritional game is on point. Okay, little nutritional insurance to start your day. What's funny is I actually heard about AG1 6-7 years ago on one of my favorite podcasts, the Tim Ferriss Show. And so now I get to tell you guys about how AG1 has benefited me. 1 scoop mixed in with my water in the morning or the afternoon. 75 high-quality ingredients that give me important daily nutrients. Helps with brain fog, energy levels, gut health. Just feel more dialed in and ready to conquer the day. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, AG1 is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/purpledaily. drinkag1.com/purpledaily.
The Rock knows how you feel about pie.
Let's carve it up.
All right, let's go. 5 slices of pie, starting with just a wee little bit 2% slice. That is going to Leroy Horde.
Yes.
So Robert Smith got off to a good start in this game, but he got hurt. Leroy Horde finishes with 58 yards on 5 carries and 2 touchdowns, 1 from 12 yards, which is a little bit of a distance for Horde, but okay, 12 yards is 12 yards. Another 50-yard touchdown. And despite the fact that Madden butchered Horde's primary takeaway on carries, which was if you need 3 yards, I'll get you 5, and if you need 5 yards,
you're butchering it too. That's what he did.
Yeah. So he said, if you need 5 yards,
1 yard, I'll get you 3.
3 if you need.
If you need 5 yards, I'll get you 3.
Oh, to John Madden right there. Oh, to John Madden.
Awesome.
I butchered it too. But anyway, Leroy Horde
if you
gets
need
2%.
7 yards, I'll get you 4. If you need 13, I'll get you.
Horde. I love this guy. I loved him. He was sort of a throwback, and he was sort of a running back / fullback build, but he actually could run. So 2% slice goes to Leroy Horde.
What's funny is I had a note. I was watching this last night and taking notes on this game, and one of my notes was Leroy Horde doing Leroy Horde things. Just he had the big rumbling run. He was barreling into the line of scrimmage. He had the neck roll. Just all of the Leroy Horde things were happening in this game. I'm glad he's represented.
All right, next we're going to go up to an 8% slice. And this is for this game. This is for Moss being the draft pick. This is an all-around thing, but he definitely played a key role in the success of the offense in this game as well. 8% slice goes to head coach Dennis Green, the offensive architect of this team, the guy who assembled this thing, which at the time in 1998 was the highest-scoring offense in the history of the league, soon to be broken by the Rams. But the fact is, so I was thinking about, should I give a little piece of pie to Brian Billick? And I'm like, nah, probably not. This was Green's baby. Billick babysat it at times, but Dennis Green was the architect of this thing. And I mean, what you saw, again, in 98, what you saw there was really where the league is at right now as almost an acceptable, it's a high-flying thing, right? But back then, I mean, your running backs were still big, and you were grinding it out, pounding it out, and along comes this guy in Moss who just changes the damn game. Like, he changed the game. I think that one reason why we have seen in the last 20 some odd years. One reason why we have seen the cornerback position improve so much, like there are some great corners now. And if you go back to that game, there were some sort of guys that couldn't keep up, is guys like Moss. Like teams said, we have to go out and draft bigger corners, but also who are at least close to the athletic equivalent of a guy like Moss. And so I will say this to my dying day. Randy Moss changed the game. Dennis Green drafted him, and this is like an example. This game on YouTube, if you watch it, is an example of the evolution of the passing game and also the receiver and cornerback positions.
You also, I love just the mix of play calling and scheme here too. That you had, they had screens dialed up to running backs. They do like Leroy Horde screen passes, and then there'd be just chunks down the field. You had Chris Carter just working the middle of the field.
Yes.
Randy Moss popping the top off the safeties. And then you had some tight ends who could catch passes, and it really was. We think back to that '98 season, and sometimes we just think, they just threw it up to Moss on every play. No, they spread the ball around. Chris Carter was still a badass, and Denny Green. You know, it's tough because Denny Green's going to be remembered ultimately for two things primarily: his rant at the podium when he was the Cardinals head coach, right? The Bears are who we thought they were.
Yeah.
And blowing the '98 NFC Championship game. But he was a great offensive mastermind and a culture builder and all these things. And this game was, I think if you're going to rank like the peak celebratory moments of Dennis Green's career as a head coach, this has to be on that Mount Rushmore for sure.
Okay. Comment that I have off of going back to watch this game, assuming that I am operating right now in a safe space, is this. Did you see the amount of underneath deception and potential like screens that they ran? And did you think what I thought, which is, oh my God, Kirk would have taken that? David Palmer on one play, who was
Judges turned
Palmer,
a 1998 Thanksgiving Day game into a rip on Kirk Cousins.
David Palmer, who was really good, like he was a precursor to a lot of the scat backs, and he leaks out a couple of times, and I'm like, Kirk would have thrown him the ball. Because Cunningham never even looked at him. Randall just dropped back and boom. And hey, the next year it was gone. So Kirk Cousins, far superior lifetime QB compared to what the Vikings got from Cunningham. But there were patterns that were established as outlets that I'm saying.
So you don't think that the Vikings would have broken the scoring record if Kirk Cousins was their quarterback that year? What a hater.
No, probably not. Probably not.
This is why Purple Daily gets a bad reputation, Declan, right here. This is why people tweet hateful things.
Did you see the patterns?
This is why people think that all we do is trash on Kirk, because you took a game from 25 years ago. Yep. One of the great games in Vikings regular season history, and you turned it into a trash on Kirk Cousins.
The illusion of complexity that Kevin O'Connell wants to establish, alive and well on Thanksgiving Day, 1998. That's all I'll say.
Also, I'm pretty sure Jake Reed was hurt for this game, so they did not. They didn't even
I
have
think you're right.
I don't remember seeing him in this game. Matthew Hatchett got some run in this game.
Yes, he did.
No Jake Reed.
All right, so 2% so far to Leroy Horde, 8% to Dennis Green. Now a bigger slice. We get into the three main pieces of pie. 20% to Chris Carter. So Chris Carter, as Phil said, what he did as far as underneath routes across the middle, what amounts to dangerous routes, was absolutely phenomenal. And here's the stat that got me from the scorebook. 7 catches, 135 yards, a 54-yard touchdown, but 12 targets. So he was targeted 12 times. So if you want to go to why did Moss cause them so many problems, it's very, very simple. They had to be focused on Carter, too. And Carter had a huge game, a really good game.
Carter was targeted more than Randy Moss in 1998. Which is...
And that game is an example.
Yeah, he was also a little faster than maybe I remember in 1998, because he did catch a pass and outran the defense for like 20 yards, and he almost got brought down a couple times. But some quintessential vintage Chris Carter in here, man. Just working the intermediate ranges and moving the chains, tough third down catches. Some good stuff. This is remembered as the Randy Moss game, but like it was a huge Chris Carter game too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So he gets 20%. The next slice of pie is not going to be a surprise. And it is a 25% chunk of pie to the guy who was slinging the ball all over Texas Stadium on that day, Randall Cunningham, 25%. Randall Cunningham, yes, Moss was great, but for 1 year as a Viking, Cunningham, caught fire. And that day alone, on Thanksgiving Day, in a national spotlight, national game, Madden Summerall calling it, Randall Cunningham threw for 359 yards, 4 touchdowns, and only 1 pick.
Yeah.
That game was
It was
from
a bad pick, by the way. Really bad pick.
It was a terrible
Really bad
pick. It was a terrible pick. Now, but it was a 90s pick, so it's a little bit different. Like now, it's like, oh my God, that's bad. At the time, you're like, that's not great, but it's the 90s. He's chucking the ball.
They'll get it back, I'm sure. Yeah.
Exactly. But anyway, 25% chunk goes to the fact that we should never forget when Cunningham was plugged in a couple of different times, actually, for Brad Johnson, Randall Cunningham, and his ability. I had forgotten, too. So the thing that he had was his passes to Carter are very different than his passes to Moss. Because Moss basically said, I'll go down the field, chuck the ball up. I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm a better player, I will get the ball. So Cunningham would throw those high passes up. But to your point, what you just said, Phil, was the passes to Carter were lasers. Randall Cunningham deserves a ton of credit for 1 year playing his ass off. And again, this game is a perfect example of how good he was in 1998.
Yeah. I think a little too much sometimes is made of like, well, I mean, pretty much anyone could have sat in that car and drove it in 1998 because like Jeff George came along in 99 and whatnot. But Cunningham drove the hell out of that car. Yes, most quarterbacks could have, scored 30 points and won some games, but he literally drove it to the highest scoring offense at the time. And the fact that record only lasted 1 year is such a shame that the Vikings didn't even have their moment really. Because the next year, the Rams broke the record, the greatest show on turf. Actually, the biggest play of the game, I thought, and it's a testament to just the offensive strategy and Randall Cunningham's willingness to just like be aggressive. So the Vikings were facing a 3rd and 18 halfway through the third quarter. Their lead had dwindled down to 24-19 at the time. Mm-hmm. So they get off to a gangbuster start. They're up 21-6 in the first 10 minutes of the game. They've scored a bunch of 50-yard touchdowns, but now the Cowboys are coming back, and the Vikings are backed up a 3rd and 18. If they punt, the Cowboys are coming back down the field. Chance to take the lead, right?
Mitch Berger.
And, Mitch Berger with the candy bar in his shoe. And Randall Cunningham just cocks and throws a bomb down the field to Moss.
Yep.
Draws a pass interference call, like a 55-yard pass down the field. Just a screw-it ball on 3rd and 18. And how many times do quarterbacks, especially in today's interception-conscious world where it's not, like he's thinking, oh, it's a punt if they pick it off. That's not even really acceptable now because you don't want them to return it. I feel like that's a great underutilized play, which is just go draw a pass interference. And they wind up getting right down there. They score 2 plays later. But his aggressiveness to just say, screw it, I'm going to throw a bleep it ball because my guy's either going to catch it or get, his jersey tugged and we're going to get a 50-yard gain out of this thing.
Yeah, he had, I would say for a large majority of that season, Cunningham, passing-wise, had no conscience. Like you go back, in fact, there's I think it might be the second touchdown to Moss, where Madden says, well, it's just about time for Randall Cunningham to heave the ball up to Moss.
Yeah.
And the next play is exactly that.
Yeah.
And I mean, those passes are pretty and look like, oh, yeah, of course he did. But to your point, there's a lot of guys that ain't doing that.
You got to do it. So they flashed a stat up on the screen, and then I tracked it for the rest of the game. This was they were 10-1. So this was the 12th game of the year for the Vikings. They had, up to that point, 29 touchdown drives of 3 minutes or less. So they were averaging like 3 touchdowns per game where the drive was 3 minutes or less. Just quick strike, boom, touchdown. Yep. And they had at least 3 in this game. Might have been even more than that.
All right, last piece of pie. No surprise here. 45% goes
Todd
to
Stussy.
No. 45% goes to Mitch
Jeff
Berger.
Christie.
Just because I liked how he punted. Gary Anderson. He was perfect that day, by the way. Gary Anderson didn't miss any that day. There's no way he was going to miss. Anyway, Randy Moss gets 45%. 8 targets, 3 catches, 163 yards, and touchdowns of 51, 56. I believe those were both on bombs. 56, which was a catch and run. He also had a 2-point conversion catch. He drew a 50-yard PI penalty. And the only downside that I could find was he did drop what would have been a long touchdown pass. I believe it was in the 4th quarter. But yes, 45% to Moss, 25% to the guy who threw him the ball, Randall Cunningham, 20% to Carter, 8% to the head coach, Dennis Green, and 2% to Horde. But my God, was that fun to watch again. Just the high. It's like acrobatic football.
The 3rd touchdown he scored, I think that was the little, like, I don't know if it was a screen. It was just a little, like,
catch and run.
Yeah. And he catches it. He kind of beats his defender, but there's also 2 or 3 other defensive backs because he's got to run 50 yards. And he's running by these guys. They're underestimating how fast he is. He's running straight down the sideline. He puts a little juke on one of the guys, and the guy, just enough for the guy to, like, take a step. But they didn't know. They didn't know how fast he was. They didn't know how long his legs were and his stride and all that stuff. But that 4th quarter, not to lament, what could have been, because he did catch 3 passes for 3 touchdowns for $163. My calculation was that touchdown pass he dropped in the 4th quarter, I think that would have been a 65-yard touchdown. Mm-hmm. So if he catches that, it's 4 catches for like 225 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Incredible. Absolutely. Now, I'm not positive that he would have actually scored. I think he would have, but there were guys. It would have been a really nice catch and run, but that's the only thing, the only demerit I can find for that entire day. The only negative for Moss was that play. This game did remind me of one thing, though. You know what I want? More flea flickers. I love the flea flicker. They're so much fun.
It's a great
Robert
play.
Smith, Cunningham, hands off to Robert Smith. Goes about 4 yards, chucks the ball back, and I love the flea flicker. When it works, I would argue it's one of the prettiest plays in sports.
Yeah, I love that one and the wide receiver pass. Give me all the wide receiver passes, man.
Yeah.
I love me a wide receiver pass.
But the flea flicker, when executed perfectly, is just beautiful.
Fake punt is up there for me, too. I love me a good executed fake punt.
Yeah, that's a good play.
I love it. It can happen like a few times a year, but it still gets me out of my seat. Oh, fake punt. And I stand up and I'm ready for it.
Flea flickers, I just want like one every 4 games or 5 games.
I think there needs to be I think 1 per game. I think it should be
USFL,
mandated.
XFL.
What?
Put the rule in.
Yes, we should mandate it. You have to run 1 flea flicker, and you can't check it down. You have to unleash it. The ball has to travel at least 30 yards in the air.
Yeah, I love that.
Don't get all nervous and like throw it to your outlet tight end, okay? I want that ball launched at least 30 to 50 yards in the air.
I love it.
So there's more to unpack here, but now we have the pie chart here. So it's 2% Leroy Horde, 8% Mastermind Denny Green, 20% Chris Carter, 25% Randall Cunningham, 45% to Randy Moss.
The Rock knows how you feel about pie.
And there's the pie chart from Judd here. So I gotta be honest, I feel like there would have been room in here somewhere. Maybe we take out like 5% of Chris Carter or something. Troy Aikman, who by the way was an old 32 years old in 1998. He had been through a lot of battles in his day.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely bludgeoned in this game. Now, I know they still put up 36 points. It was mostly garbage time by the end, like they were down by 17. But how many times was he writhing in pain on the ground? And this is an era, too. This was, one of my notes was how violent this game, like this particular game was super violent.
Yeah.
It was like questionable late hits on the sidelines. It was Troy Aikman with probably a ruptured spleen after. At one point in the 3rd quarter, they put up a graphic that he hadn't been sacked yet, but he had been hit like 11 times. And then I counted at least 5 more times where they just destroyed him. Because this was the time in the NFL where they'd give you like a beat or two after the quarterback throws, and you could, whatever path you were on, you could
And
still
wide
tackle
receivers
him.
got destroyed.
Yes, like over the middle. Well,
Yeah.
There was one play. Was it Jimmy Hitchcock? Is he the cornerback
Yeah.
for the Vikings?
Yeah, I think he was one of them.
So Jimmy Hitchcock, early in the game, face mask tackles Michael Irvin, and this is the concrete AstroTurf we're talking about here. This isn't like the field turf that gives you some give. And Jimmy Hitchcock face mask tackles Michael Irvin and doesn't let go. He pulls his face mask into the ground, and I'm sure Irvin was concussed, but they didn't check for that back in 1998.
No.
So I
No
just thought there was
spotter back
maybe
then.
room for like a John Randall or somebody for just making Troy Aikman's life hell for the first 3 quarters of that game and allowing the Vikings to build that lead.
Few things that I loved in this game. How 2 things. How the Vikings scored 46 points on just 21 minutes of time of possession. To Phil's point of just getting touchdowns in like basically 6 plays or less. That is nuts to me. And I love how the over-under in this game, you can go back and find this stuff too on Pro Football Reference. They'll put the over-under. The over-under in this game was 46.5. The total point score was 82. So, I mean, it just doubled.
Wow.
I mean,
I'm
it was
surprised.
almost doubled.
Interesting.
Just absolutely, just 2 teams throwing a bunch of haymakers up. But yeah, I loved how the Vikings just had that's like on Madden. Like you score 46 points. I used to do that like on Madden in 08. Like that's absurd. 46 points on 22
What Cunningham
minutes of time
was, though.
possessions.
Like,
Yeah.
he literally is dropping back and chucking the ball.
Yeah. It was relentless, man. I love it. And if they had just kept doing that in the NFC Championship game and through the Super Bowl, like just continue to be relentless. And we'll get to the 98 championship game and the pie charts at some point too. A couple more things off this, and then I actually have a take on just like the time period of sports too. But let's shout out our friends over at Power Lodge here, boys. Power Lodge and Miller Marine. We saw a couple different people send us pictures of their Bennington pontoons that hopefully they got from Miller Marine or Power Lodge. But it is throttle therapy season here. It's a great time to disconnect from all your Minnesota sports woes and get out on a Bennington from Power Lodge or Miller Marine, Judd.
And just look at that. I mean, look at the relaxation. Look at Declan flipping into the lake off the
Actually,
Bennington. It's so much fun. That is the thing. Summers in our blessed state, they are a little bit too short. But you know what? When you got the opportunity, take advantage. And right now, you have the opportunity. Get that Bennington today. Get out for the 4th of July and enjoy the beautiful weather.
I saw some over the weekend at the cabin. I saw some Benningtons just coming across the lake.
Great.
Yeah.
I'd just like to go on
man.
one.
It's a good time. Powerlodge.com and millermarine.com. Also, if you're looking to just look good and feel good out on the water or wherever, Livia can help you get to your ideal playing weight sometime this summer.
Absolutely correct. And they have a deal right now. So if you are trying to drop the pounds and you're thinking, you know what, in a month, I'd like to be down about 15 or so. Well, just look at me as an example. The guy on the left, the guy on the right, that's the same person. It's just that Livia helped me drop significant weight, 40 pounds a couple of years back, and they're going to help you too. And do they have an offer? 8 weeks free. That's right, 8 weeks free. 855 go LIVEA, Livia.com. And in fact, if you have had success, because we know a lot of our PD family has joined this and has sent us notes, send us your weight loss story and receive a Score North prize pack. Send it to share Livia at scorenorth.com. That's share LIVEA at scorenorth.com, and you will get a Score North prize pack because we would love to hear and share your weight loss journey too.
A couple other things here off this game here on this historical pie chart episode. Judd, maybe you can, because you were the only adult in the room in the 90s. Declan was like, I don't know, 7 years
5,
old when this game, 5 years old.
Yeah,
I was a kid. But it maybe you can put some context on this, that it had been 10 years since the Vikings last beat the Cowboys when this game was played. The last time the Vikings had beat the Cowboys was 1988. Now, they only played like 3 or 4 times over those 10 years, but the previous matchup before this one was the 1996 playoffs, in which the Cowboys destroyed the Vikings. They were up 30-0 at halftime. They wind up winning 40-15. And obviously they weren't dynastic in 98 because they had a bad 97, but they were still the Cowboys and Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin, and there was still this mystique and this hill to climb. I remember as a kid just sort of feeling like, the Vikings are awesome and they're probably better, but it's still the Cowboys and they still are pretty fresh off 3 Super Bowl championships. But can you put that into context, what it was like? Oh, they conquered the Cowboys on that day. Was there an aspect of that?
Oh, absolutely, too. But again, it all started back then at the time with Moss. Like, Moss changed everything. It's hard to describe it now because I don't know if there are true reference points. Like, Kaprizov is a great player, and there are some really good players. I don't know that we have seen a player in this town change a sport like Moss did. And so this whole faction, this whole big group of now aging to a certain degree Vikings fans who in 97 probably didn't care, like, they aren't aboard because they embraced the heartache of the loss to the Falcons. They're on board because of exactly games like this or the Packers game. And those games, as good as Cunningham played and the offense looked, those games revolved around Moss.
Yeah.
So, yes, there was if the Cowboys could be compared to, and they could at the time, how Twins fans would begin to feel about the Yankees, Moss was the kryptonite of the Cowboys. And I'm telling you, too, it was a big deal. Deion didn't play. Like, nobody was buying that if they had been playing, I don't know, some average team with okay receivers, that Deion's like, can't go. And Deion was, at the time, obviously a huge name. So, yes, you are exactly right. This was part of the, oh, my God, this guy is changing the game, and really did, in retrospect, change the way I think that fans felt about this team.
Yeah. A few other notes here just for fun. I made a note that 1998 was a really fun year to be a sports fan in general. You know, the Vikings, obviously. You had the steroid summer in baseball.
Great. Fun summer.
McGuire and Sosa with steroid, riddled bodies and corked bats or whatever else. You had Michael Jordan's last NBA title run in 1998. Tiger Woods had just burst on the golf scene and won the 97 Masters and was, playing his full schedule. You had the Red Wings Avalanche rivalry in the NHL, trading literal haymakers. And then on the wrestling front, you had the explosion of the Attitude Era. It was the rise of Stone Cold, DX, The Rock, and then the NWO and WCW. And it was like 98 was, I'd put 98 up there with one of the all-time great years to be a sports fan, especially if you were a Vikings fan, up until the game that we don't speak of.
And at that time, there was also something special about a standalone game, Summerall and Madden too.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't exist now, I don't think, in football.
Not on that level, no.
Burkhart's fine, and Joe Buck was fine too, but when Pat and John came on, stuff was getting serious.
Yeah, when the really 17-legged turkey was wheeled out too, you knew that something was getting serious. So there it is, Judd's pie chart of praise for
The Rock knows how you feel about pie.
One of the great iconic games in Vikings history. So we'll keep sprinkling in these historical pie charts this week. If you have ideas for games that we didn't mention in that list that you'd like to see us review, send us a message through the Score North app, the feedback tab, or hit us up on Twitter or the YouTube comment section, and we'll do it again tomorrow. See you guys.